I'm the Education Director for the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy, which is a small nonprofit based out of Cape Cod. And as was mentioned, if you had reached out previously, we're a very young nonprofit. So we're about to turn 4 next month. So it's a new organization. In my background and how I got involved is I went to school in South Carolina. I went to Coastal Carolina University and I studied marine science. Growing up, I loved the ocean. So I knew that I wanted to pursue something that had to do with the ocean. And I'll never forget being in 8th grade when I took my first marine biology class and I realized that I could pursue a whole college major based on the ocean, and having that moment and realizing that, that reality of doing something that I love could come true. And when I was in college, I had the opportunity to take a field course to the Bahamas, which was really incredible. And I still like to brag that I got college credit for going and spending a month in the Bahamas. It was a great experience. But so I went to the Bimini Biological Field Station, and as I said, I always loved the ocean. I was never a shark nut until I saw them in the wild. That's what hooked me. And when I was in Bimini, we were out doing long line catches to put tags on sharks, and we came up and we came across a small tiger shark, just a pup. It was 83 centimeters in length. Tiger sharks, if you know anything about sharks, are known for being one of the most dangerous sharks in our ocean. They really have one of the worst reputations. But when you see it as a young baby with those spots and the coloration, it changed everything for me. And I couldn't help but look at that animal and think, why do you have such a horrible reputation? You're going to grow up and maybe you'll make a mistake. I know I've made mistakes as I've grown up. But so having this encounter and seeing this animal, and then the next day, I saw the full grown. So then the next day I was in the water with a 12-foot tiger shark. So to see it on both ends for it, it helped me build my own understanding and really think about how I viewed sharks. So then after graduating college, I took the education route. And I work with the scientists and I help to bring the research and what's going on out into the community so people can have an understanding. So I appreciate you all coming today. I know this is, for some of you, it's a break in between classes. So thanks for joining us in here. But so I started volunteering for the Conservancy. And it was, when it first started, just about 4 years ago, it was an all-volunteer nonprofit. And the reason it was started is because the white shark research that's being done here in Massachusetts is led by Dr. Greg Scommel. If you've watched Shark Week, he's the one who gets all excited and energetic, and he's the face of the white shark research that's being done here in Massachusetts. And he really does get that excited in real life. This is someone who gets to live his passion and do what he loves every day. But he works for the Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries. And historically, his job isn't just about white sharks. It's about many different species. And so the state was not providing set funding to continue or build upon the white shark research. So there was a need for funding. So that's the executive director of the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy, Cynthia Wigren, was on a phone call with Dr. Scommel, and she was trying to figure out, looking at public safety and everything that was going on with these sharks. And she realized there was a need for more funding. What could she do to help increase? Because the more research that could take place, the more we could do in terms of public safety, the more we know about the animal's behavior. So she went to Google, and she actually hung up the phone with him, and she Googled, how do I start a nonprofit organization? A month later, the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy was born. I found out about it through Twitter. So one of the first things that they did is they created a Twitter account. I saw the tweet come out from them. So it's interesting when you look at the story of how this organization has really blown up in recent years, but it all started through Google, and a big part of its growth has been because of social media. But so under the Conservancy, we have 3 cores to our mission. So it's to fund the research, it's then to use that research and help in public safety efforts, and then it's also education. So sharing what it is that's taking place and working with the community to build that understanding. And for me, in my role, one of the questions that we get a lot, that because I had an experience and I went to school for marine science, first when I started hearing this question, it didn't make sense to me. But everyone started saying, well, why sharks? Why should we try to conserve sharks? What's the point? Now, why do you think that is? Why do you think so many people have a hard time in how they view sharks, thinking that we should conserve them and work to save them? What do you think when people hear the word shark is the first thing that comes into their mind? What was it?
Lawyers.
Lawyers. There are definitely some people on the Cape who think in terms of lawyers. That is true. Yeah? Jaws. You are absolutely right. So a hard part in what we do is we have to change public perception. So when people hear the word shark, usually immediately one of the first words that comes to mind is, in fact, Jaws. And it's really interesting when you look at the history of the movie. Before it was a movie, it was actually a book. Anyone know who wrote the book, Jaws? Peter Benchley. So Peter Benchley wrote the book, and he was an ocean person himself. He grew up summering on Nantucket. He just wanted to write a great book. It was never his intention to actually produce something that made sharks look like a villain. After that movie came out, he had a regret because he saw how then that movie launched a lot of shark fishing tournaments. And it caused a lot of people to want to go out and kill these sharks, bring them back in to the dock, and hang them up as a big trophy. That was never his intent. So after Jaws came out, he actually worked in shark conservation movements. And he has since passed, but his wife, Wendy Benchley, actually still speaks all around the world. She talks usually once a year at the New England Aquarium as well, to promote shark conservation and the importance, and how, after the book and movie came out, Peter took it as a personal mission to go and try to correct that image that he created. I think it's interesting because, I get to work in my job with people of all ages, and Jaws is an older movie. And now when I talk to a lot of teens, they automatically think, oh, well, Jaws was so fake. Because when you watch it now compared to movies from today, we've advanced our skills a little bit in movie production. Unfortunately, anyone know another movie that came out in the last few years that's not doing a very good thing for the image of sharks? Well, Sharknado at least. Well, little ones, I actually get that question a lot. Well, what's going to happen? Are they going to come up out of the ocean? But for the most part, that's not the one that's kind of set this fire going again. There was one that came out last year. The Shallows, yes. So the Shallows also kind of spearheaded this back up again, But then it was also interesting at the same time because you had a lot of people who, when you followed things on social media, looked at it and were like, why would they make another movie like this? Aren't people starting to realize that we need these sharks? We shouldn't be painting them as a villain. But then even with the younger kids, anyone know why they're scared of sharks? You guys might be a little older, but anyone remember a movie about a little clownfish? Finding Nemo. In that movie, you have Bruce. So even though, Jaws for our older audiences is what they think of, even with the movies that still come out today, we're still seeing sharks as the villain in a lot of those films. So we get that question, why sharks? So we usually start our outreach by, that PR campaign, because the reality when we look at white sharks is they aren't so bad once you get to know them, and they actually serve a very important role in our ocean ecosystem. And we have to replace the fear with facts. Because the reality is, if I asked you what is a shark, how many of you could give me the full definition right now? The first part that a lot of people don't actually realize is absolutely a shark is a fish. There is one species of shark, the whale shark, and because of that, we're using that word whale in its common name. Many people think that sharks are actually mammals. But first and foremost, a shark is a fish, meaning it has gills for breathing and fins for locomotion. And if I asked you to define a white shark, you would be correct when you said that it has to maintain swimming in order to be breathing. But there are other species of shark that can come to rest. So off our coastline, we have a big fishery for spiny dogfish sharks. They're bottom-dwelling sharks, and they actually have an adaptation. It's called a spiracle that allows them to come to rest. So that's always a tricky. I've actually been to, any of you guys play trivia night? I've had that at trivia before, where I got in an argument with the person because that was one of the things, true or false, a shark has to come to rest. Well, the interesting thing about sharks when you look at shark biology is it comes down to what species of shark are you actually talking about. There are over 500 known species of sharks, and each of them is a bit different, and all of them have some different abilities. One, white sharks, they have to maintain swimming in order to breathe. But a nurse shark or a spiny dogfish, because they have that adaptation, they can come to rest. but there is a lot of myths and false ideas out there about sharks. So we're trying to build that actual understanding. And because of the research that's being done here on Cape Cod, we focus that understanding on the great white shark. And the reality is, this is an incredibly important animal in our ocean food chain. And I always like using this cartoon because it references that. It says it's not something you achieve, it's who you are. And it is. As a great white shark, they are an apex predator. They are at the top of our ocean food chain. So what does that mean? Being at the top of our ocean food chain, why is that so important? I'm going to get bored if I talk the whole time, so I'm hoping we can have a bit of conversation with this. They're going to regulate the fish population. How? Because they typically don't actually eat fish, especially the ones here off Cape Cod. They're a bit spoiled. They want something bigger.
Seals.
They want the seals, absolutely. Okay, so they do though. They control the food chain from the top down. So we have the white sharks out there. They eat the gray seals, which eat the fish, which eats the next layer, and it goes down. Without that apex predator there and a healthy amount on the top, we're going to see our seal population continue to grow. If that seal population grows, we're going to see a decline in our fish population. You need to have even amounts of everything, and that starts with that apex predator at the top. So when you think of it that way, white sharks really are not a villain in our ocean. For us here, looking at this apex predator, we need them. They're not a villain, they're not the bad guy, they're the good guy that's going to keep our whole ocean food chain in balance. And when you have a healthy ocean food chain, you have a healthy ocean. And here on the Cape, we have now come to say that we're a hot spot. Now, does that mean that we have Wi-Fi everywhere? What does it mean if we describe an area in terms of research as a hot spot?
Lots of them.
What was it?
Lots of.
Absolutely. It means that we have lots of this animal. So historically, if you wanted to study great white sharks, you went to Guadalupe Island. You went to the Farallon Islands. Maybe you go down off of South Africa. Those were known hotspots, places where you could go and find white sharks so you could actually conduct a research population. Here in the Atlantic, and especially in the northern Atlantic, we did not have an area where that could happen. So white sharks are a highly migratory species. They're going to travel to all different places, and through our tagging, we're able to see that. But if you want to study an animal, you need to have access to it. And in research, you can't just go out and do a couple samples in 1 year. You have to have multiple years of data to support what it is you're trying to claim. So it's not just you need to have access to them once, you need predictable access year after year after year. And we now have that predictable access because of this animal right here. These are gray seals. And you can see this is a large group of them hauled out on a sandbar. And we've seen an increase in gray seals off of Cape Cod. Anyone know why? You guys talk about policy at all in your class?
Not yet. We're getting there.
Not yet? Okay. Well, then you'll be ready for it when it comes up. But so gray seals were actually hunted. So historically on Cape Cod, there was actually a bounty on them, where people could go out, they could kill a seal, they'd take the nose, they'd go into Chatham Town Hall, and they'd receive a stipend. And there were some really smart people who would go into Chatham, they would get the stipend, but they'd keep the nose, and then they'd drive up 28, and they'd go to New Orleans, and they'd get a stipend from them as well. But people wanted to kill this animal. So everyone was going out, they were killing the seals, and we hit a point where we had a near extinction rate of gray seals. So in 1972, when they passed the Marine Mammal Act, the gray seals fell under that act, making it illegal to hunt this animal anymore. That piece of legislation is so strict, you cannot touch a gray seal. So there were a few divers off the coast of Marshfield a few years ago who came across a seal pup, so a baby, and this pup had been bit. It was in bad shape, so they thought they were doing the right thing. They put it on their dive buoy and brought it into the beach and called the aquarium. The aquarium came down and said, we're not going to touch it. We're going to wait, and we're going to call a higher authority. And these divers who thought they were doing something really great almost faced a very large fine because they had actually touched these animals. So they're very strictly protected. But they're not protected from their natural predator, which is the great white shark. So when you look at this seal that's hauled out here, do you notice anything on it? got a boo-boo. That's one way to put it, absolutely. So when you look to the back of that animal, you are going to see the bite mark. You can see where those jaws actually bit in right around the back there into that blubber. And we see a lot of seals with these bite marks because some of them are pretty good and they get bit by the shark, but they're able to get up onto the beaches. And just like if you fall off a bike or a skateboard and you receive a scar, the seals can have scars on them. So we have people who pay good money to go out on seal tours, and we're always asking them, ooh, did you see any with a bite mark on them? And then we very quickly realize that there are shark people and there are seal people. And some of them don't like when we're asking, like, ooh, did you see one with a bite on it or anything? But this is the primary food source. This is what the sharks off of Cape Cod, are going after. This is what they want to eat, that steak dinner. And we've always had white sharks off our coast, but we have more access to them because these seals are hauling out in shallow water. So the sharks, to try to get that food source, are swimming into more shallow water, and they're patrolling those beaches, trying to wait for one of those seals to come in so that they can grab on it. So hopefully it loads. There we go. So this video here will show you that eating behavior of a white shark. So this is taken using a GoPro. So there's the white shark there. In just a moment, so that's a seal carcass you can see hanging out of its mouth. That gives you a good view there of how it had bit right in. So the seal had been bitten into half, and now it's trailing with this piece that it'll finish consuming. So because we have predictable access to them, the research is able to occur here in Massachusetts, right off the coast of Cape Cod. And the research is being led, again, by Dr. Greg Skolmel. So he works for the Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries. White sharks are not the first shark species to be studied off of our coast. If you go down to Duxbury, one of the piers down there, they've had a long-term study looking at sandbar sharks. They catch them right off of there, put tags on them, release them back to track their movements. There's been a lot of tagging with basking sharks. We have scientists working with mako sharks, with some of the blue sharks. We've also had some working on thresher sharks out there. We like to say the white shark is kind of the sexy shark in the area. This is the one that everyone gets excited about and talks about, but this is not the first species of shark that research has been done on here off of Massachusetts. And a lot of the photos that I show you, and this is the key to our research as you go through this and see them, are taken by a spotter pilot. So you can see here the research boat really isn't that big, okay? It's just your typical center console boat. The key to it, however, is they put a wheelhouse up on that top deck there so that the captain can see what's going on in the water. And then the boat has what coming off the bow is called a pulpit. And that allows Dr. Skolmel to get out onto that to start the workup on the shark. You can see the silhouette there. But the key again to what's being done is we have people out on boats off Cape Cod using boats recreationally all the time who are probably around these white sharks but have no idea. To get on the shark and realize it, the best thing you can do is have someone else spotting it for you. So we work with who I think is one of the greatest people in the world, the spotter pilot Wayne Davis. And so he flies around, he goes up, he flies out of Chatham Airport, and if a shark is within 18 feet of the surface, he can actually spot that shark. And then he radios to the boat, and the boat makes its movement, and it goes to exactly where they're directing them to. And have you ever had teachers talk to you about communication skills and how they're vital in the workforce? No?
Yes.
Maybe?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. Looking at this and being a part of this was, for me, one of the first times where I really saw communication skills to the extreme.